Welcome to another bonus edition of the MTB podcast, a segment of the weekly episode that I call Afterthoughts. This is my favorite part of these weekly presentations because it gives me a chance to dig a little deeper into something that came up during the main episode. So this week's theme sort of centered around one simple but powerful idea: community. Not just the word we toss around in mission statements or church bulletins, but real, tangible, roll up your sleeves and show up for each other kind of community. The kind that shares food, shares burdens, and maybe even shares a decent bottle of wine. And yet, when we look at the history of Christianity, and honestly, most organized religion, it doesn't matter where you start. It always seems to end the same way. Someone's in charge, someone's at the bottom, and a whole bunch of people are somewhere in the middle trying to figure out if their voice matters. Catholic, Protestant, Evangelical, Non-denominational, pick your flavor, and at some point, you'll find someone declaring they speak for God, and a whole lot of people just nodding along. So that's what we're going to unpack today. Why does every grassroots movement, even the ones that begin with a group of friends and a shared loaf of bread, so often morph into top-down power structures? Is it inevitable? Is that just human nature? And if it is human nature, is there something intentional that we can do instead? Because maybe the answer isn't to fight for power within these old structures. Maybe the answer is to stop playing their game altogether. Maybe we can stop trying to grow the next big thing and instead learn how to spread something small and good and meaningful. So let's dig into that in this week's episode of Afterthoughts. All right, let's start with the obvious. Humans are weird. We'll rebel against authority and then turn around and sort of accidentally recreate the exact same structures we just tried to escape. Why? Well, it turns out we're hardwired to want a few things, like order, clarity, and a sense of direction. Especially when life feels uncertain, it's comforting to know someone's got a plan, even if the plan isn't great. And when someone stands up and says, "Follow me, I've got the answers," a whole lot of us will just breathe a sigh of relief and go, "Phew, okay, finally." I mean, how the hell else did Donald Trump get elected again? Then there's the temptation of efficiency. Let's be honest. Making decisions as a group is messy. It takes time, energy, and a hell of a lot of patience. Hierarchies just seem easier. One person calls the shots and boom, we're done. Problem solved. Except it's not really solved. It's just streamlined. And when you trade shared responsibility for centralized control, there is always a cost. You lose individual agency. People start deferring their moral judgment to the person in charge. Well, the pastor said it, so it must be right. Before you know it, power starts getting abused because, well, that's what happens when there's no accountability. And history has shown this again and again and again. Catholicism was probably the first big institutionalized version of Christianity. Then came the Reformers, Martin Luther and the gang, who were like, "Hey, this centralized power thing is out of control." And what happened? Well, they created their own structures of control. Episcopal systems, synods, councils, denominations, even the most anti-authoritarian movements. Things like the house churches, the non-denominationals, the we're just a fellowship of believers folks. eventually start appointing leaders, forming boards, writing doctrines, and boom, you've got another pyramid with someone at the top. It's not just because we're bad people. I think it's because we're people. But just because something is natural doesn't mean it's helpful. And if we want to create something better, something healthier, we have to start by recognizing this pattern. If we rewind the clock on Christianity, right, before the cathedrals, before the Vatican, before the mega churches with jumbotrons and smoke machines, it all started in people's homes. Literally. The early followers of the way met in living rooms, around kitchen tables, probably sitting on mismatched stools and floor cushions. There were no pulpits, no choirs, no guys in fancy robes and weird hats. Just a couple of people trying to live out their values. Small groups. They share what they had. They support each other through the messiness of life. Honestly, that sounds a lot more like a potluck than religious programming. And maybe that's the point. Because here's the thing. Strong communities don't need hierarchy to function well. They don't need someone up front telling everyone else what to do. What they do need is trust and shared values and people who are actually committed to showing up for each other, not just once a week to check a religious box, but consistently through hard conversations and shared meals and real life support. That's what makes a community strong and resilient. Not a building, not a budget, and certainly not a figurehead. This is where I want to introduce a phrase that I think could be a game changer. Spread, not grow. Right? Spread, not grow. Instead of trying to build a bigger and bigger and bigger community until someone's in charge and we've got bylaws and committee meetings again, what if we thought of communities like sourdough starters? You take what's alive and nourishing in one place and you pass a little piece of it on to someone else. They don't replicate what you have exactly. They build something that works for them. And when that's ready, they pass it along too. So the real magic isn't in how many people you can fit in the room or how many followers you have on social media. The magic is in how that room feels. It's in the quality of the relationships, the level of care, the depth of cooperation. It's when people feel seen, supported, and invited to bring their full selves to the table. A table where they won't be judged. That's where transformation happens. Not from the top down, but side to side. So let's try to get practical. What would it actually look like to build one of these values-based micro-communities? Honestly, it would be as simple as 3 or 4 families who agree to show up for each other. Maybe they share a few meals a month. Maybe they take turns watching each other's kids or carpool to work or appointments or just check in on tough days. It's not about signing a covenant or starting a nonprofit. It's just about saying, you know what? We're in this together. And actually meaning it. And let's talk about space for a minute. Because guess what? You don't need a steeple or stained glass. You've got libraries, parks, living rooms. Heck, a picnic table in someone's backyard will do just fine when the weather cooperates. People have been gathering and supporting each other in informal ways forever. We're just talking about reclaiming that spirit without the hierarchy. And instead of focusing on beliefs or dogma, these micro-communities, well, they can focus on practices. That's the key. You could start each gathering with a quick gratitude circle. You could do monthly meetups where everyone brings a challenge and the group brainstorms solutions. You could organize mutual aid when someone's car breaks down or when a neighbor's fridge is empty. When your foundation is shared values, things like compassion, equity, integrity, you don't need everyone to agree on theology. You just need them to care. And let's not underestimate the power of digital tools. You can create a private group chat, a shared calendar, or even a small forum just for your circle. Post meal trains, celebrate milestones, offer help when someone's struggling. Digital connection can't replace in-person care, but it can definitely strengthen it. Especially for people juggling jobs, kids, or crazy schedules. Technology isn't the enemy of community. It's just another tool in the toolbox. So now let's talk about how this idea can grow without, growing. Because that's the trick, right? As soon as something starts to get big, we default to structure, to bylaws, to leaders and followers, and eventually someone's printing business cards and buying folding chairs, and before you know it, we're back in church basement committee meetings wondering why it all feels so heavy again. But what if the goal isn't to scale? What if the goal is to spread? As I said earlier, think of it like a sourdough starter, something alive and nourishing that you can pass along to someone else. You don't need to build a mega commune or turn your neighborhood into a social experiment. You just need to model it well, to talk about it openly, and then encourage others to do the same. If your little group is working, people will notice. They'll ask questions. And then you can say, hey, want to try this with a few of your people? That's how values-based communities grow, not by amassing numbers, but by inspiring replication. And here's the beautiful part. Spreading doesn't require control. You don't need a franchise manual. You don't need to make sure every group is doing things your way. You don't need the weekly lectionary that ensures that every group around the world is looking at the same religious text on the same day. You just need to trust that the values, if they're solid, will guide people in the right direction. Compassion, accountability, justice, shared responsibility. If those are the seeds we're planting, we can trust that what spreads will be meaningful. So instead of thinking like empire builders, well, let's think like gardeners. Let's tend our own patch of soil. Let's support each other when the weeds show up. And let's trust that when we live by our values, the ripples will carry further than we ever imagined. So here's the vision we're left with. Not a towering institution, not a massive movement with matching t-shirts and branding guidelines, but something quieter. Something more human and way more sustainable. A movement that doesn't scale up. It ripples outward. So the call to action? Don't wait around for the next big leader or organization to show up and solve everything. Look for your people. The ones who share your values. The ones who are tired of hierarchy and hungry for something real. Start with them. And remember, we're not trying to recreate church. We're trying to reclaim the best parts of community. The parts that feel like family without the baggage. The parts that leave you a little more hopeful than when you arrived. The parts where nobody has to pretend they've got it all figured out. And if you're wondering how to start, well, here it is. You don't need permission. You don't need a certificate or a mission statement. All you need is a table to sit around, a value worth sharing, and some other people to share it with. That's it. That's where the magic begins. All right, thanks for joining me for this episode of Afterthoughts. If you want to keep up on everything I'm doing, please head over to thecodaproject.com and subscribe to my newsletter. You'll get notifications whenever I publish anything, and I'll also keep you updated on the weekly live streams of mythologizing the Bible. Also, if you subscribe for free over at thecodaproject.com, you'll start receiving my weekly resource called The Weekly Compass. This is a brief, once-a-week guide on a single core value. Think of it as a mini lesson plan for personal growth. It's perfect for families, students, and adults, or a group who's starting to gather around a table and needs something to talk about, because I include discussion questions designed for several age groups. Each weekly issue centers on a short reflection about the week's value, followed by discussion questions that are tailored for different age groups, from kids to college students to adults. And then a simple take action step, like a small challenge or exercise you can do to put that value into practice. Especially for families, it's designed to be an easy way to ensure that at least once a week, you're making time to talk about morality, ethics, and core values. So, if you're interested, go subscribe for free at thecodaproject.com. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, keep thinking, keep questioning, and keep seeking the truth.